Future Napier Committee. I would like to ask for a mover for our apologies. We have Councillor Bogue, Mia Wise and Councillor Simpson, who may be joining us online. Councillor Crown and Councillor Mawson. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Call for any conflicts of interest. There being none. No announcements by myself. Call for any minor matters not on the agenda. There being none. Ask Rachel Bailey if there's any announcements by management. There being none. Can I ask for a mover for our minutes, please, to be held as true and correct? Record on the 22nd of February. Moved by Councillor Gregg, seconded by Councillor Mawson. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Right, I'd like to invite Bill Roberts and Lucy from the Regional Economic Development Agency up to talk to us about our first paper, which is our update on the Regional Economic Development Agency. And kia ora, Shane.
Tēnā koutou kua tai mai nei ki tēnei wahi I tēnei ata nā mihi nui ki a koutou ko Wiramu tōku ingoa. So greetings everyone. Yes, I'm Bill Roberts, the Economic Development Manager, and I'm very pleased to have here the newly formed Economic Development Agency Chief Executive, Lucy Leighton, and a member of the board, Shane Walker. So I will hand over to them to get into their presentation.
O tūtahi me mea tika koutou te committee, a koutou ngā māngai me ngā whiriwhiri kōrero wahuriri nei, tēnei taku mihi atu kia mātou ko Rita, hoi anō me mātou pōtai o te rohe whānui no te wairoa tai atu ki tamatia, a hoki mai nei ki taku kāinga kei konei ki ahuriri ana reira. Kei te tino hari ko mātou, kua tai mai nei, kei waina o koutou hei whakamārama te kaupapa me te haerenga, me te rautaki o Matariki me Rita. Ana reira, tēnā tātou. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kōrero koutou, and it's lovely to finally be here at Napier City Council. I started my role in August last year, and I know you had previous visits, perhaps even from our chair, Alistair, who also sends his apologies. He's overseas at the moment. I've been in my role since August, but just a little bit of background. I grew up in Hawke's Bay on a farm in Kereru, and then boarded at Sacred Heart, Napier, before my family moved up to Ruatoria as a teenager where we farmed. And I've been, like many people, overseas and worked in Auckland and other places, and came back about 6 years ago, where previously I was CEO for Anglican Care Waiapu, where we drove a real approach to social investment. So I have a really strong, vision around economic development, which is around wellbeing vision. That looks far beyond just narrow economic growth, but more to how are we looking after our people, our environment, and a broader perspective. So it's been a really interesting last few months coming into Rita. The vision of Rita obviously being set up as a company that's going to meet the needs of all of our region. So trying to hold on to that space and be really clear about what we can do and what we can't do as an organisation it's taken a little bit of working through. But I'm just going to rip into a presentation, and please interrupt or ask questions along the way. I just thought it would be a good idea just to do a little bit of a background of how we came to be set up, just a reminder where we're at now. And Shane, you jump in whenever you want to too. So those of you that were around then will remember that there was a review of Business Hawke's Bay, which was a previous iteration of an EDA. That led to the councils pulling funding from Business Hawke's Bay and making a commitment to develop an economic development agency. But what was different about it was that there was a commitment made to do that alongside iwi and business. So also the councils wanted to keep the business hub in Ahuriri, and that was later added on to the Rita remit, I guess. So a bit of time went by, but by August 22, there was an agreement over that ownership construct. So we were actually set up as a company with 3 sets of shareholders, and each of them have equal rights. So we've got the local government group, obviously with the 5 entities, iwi that's represented through Te Kahui Ohanga, the 6 PSGEs, and business through a brand new Māori business network and the Chamber of Commerce. So when it was established, or when the idea was on the table, councils, including yourselves, agreed to funding for the first 3 years with the idea that other shareholders and other funders would come on board in time. So Matariki, the governance group for the region, was appointed to oversee READER and act as the shareholder representative. So in December 2022, our board was appointed. So our chair is Alistair McLeod. We obviously have Shane Walker, Rawinia Kamo, Karen Rangi, and Erin Simpson. It's an independent, skills-based board. So they're all company directors. And just as alongside this, a board was appointed and the regional council was taking care of READER's funding and setup from a financial perspective up until about a few months ago, actually. And the idea was that READER was going to take on the business hub over here in Ahuriri and just continue, but because the business hub lost its lease, there was a decision made amongst councils, this was before our time, to move the hub over to Hastings. So a location was found at 101 Queen Street East, and that has now, we've set that up, but we've called it Te Rai, and it's a new business hub. I'll go into a bit more detail about that. As I said, I was appointed in August. We incorporated only in September, got our bank account last November, and finally in February we got our shareholders charter approved, which is kind of the really important document for us to lay out alongside our constitution about how things are going to be run. How do we make decisions, and what are we actually going to do? So this is just a little reminder. Hopefully I'm not going too fast. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but why we were set up from the review, the Section 17A review that was done by Gus Charteris on Business Hawke's Bay. And these are really relevant points just to keep in mind, that there was a real desire to have that regional entity with appropriate mandate and resourcing to look at supporting Hawke's Bay to be greater than the sum of its parts, be really effective around measurement and reporting, making sure we're using ratepayers' money well. And there's this sting in the tail down here too, which we've certainly felt or heard a lot about, I guess, over the last few months in our involvement with READER, that legacy of mistrust, because there have been a number of iterations of an EDA, nothing quite like us, of course. So the funding worked out like this. There's 3 years of funding were committed. Unfortunately, in the way that the world works, when you make a council resolution, it would be great if an organisation was automatically set up and fully functioning, but with all of the I guess the discussions and toing and froing about what type of organisation to set up and how to appoint the board and so on, it took quite some time. So we're actually 1.5 years through our funding. And we're going into we've shifted our financial year to coincide with council. So we'll be going into our 3rd financial year at the start of July, even though we've only been incorporated in September. So it's important just to keep that in mind.
Just a question, Lucy, from myself. On your budget, if we're a year and a half through, have you got a surplus?
Yes, yeah, we've got a carry forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So we have a constitution that was established by the shareholders, and then the board, READER board, and I worked on the charter, and we outlined more clearly in the charter what the purpose of READER was, and worked with our shareholder representatives, including, of course, Mia Kirsten as the representative on Matariki, to make sure that we captured what you want READER to do, because you own us. We are there for you. And it's all about securing better economic outcomes for the region and helping the region to work collaboratively and to have that long-term view, that joined-up thinking, potentially to be a challenger and an advocate for good decision-making that takes into account the multiple issues that need to be taken into account if we want to think about long-term well-being for our whānau in Hawke's Bay. So that's very high level. And this, I think you've all received the charter, so this is just to let you know how the mechanics of it work. So we've got these 3 classes of shareholders. So we have a constitution and a charter which appoints the Matariki Governance Group as the body that oversees our performance and we report to. But we will have, as soon as our letter of expectations is signed off with Matariki, we will have a funding agreement between the local government funders and Reader. So at the moment, we've had an exchange of letters to say that that is coming because we know that you need that for your own reasons. But we just wanted to get away from having a situation where we would have multiple letters of expectation with multiple different shareholder entities. So we're getting there, and we presented the draft letter of expectations to Matariki on Friday last week, which I'll talk about in a minute. Our board spent quite a lot of time. Do you want to jump in any point here? Or? Yeah, spent quite a lot of time talking about how we make decisions and the types of work that we would be involved in. As you can imagine, economic development agencies around the country, they come in all shapes and sizes. Some of them are within councils, some of them are charitable trusts, some of them are companies, and they work on a whole range of different areas depending on whatever their funding, historical, what the pathway led to them being there. So we wanted to be really clear that we wanted our shareholders to be supportive and agree on the work program so that we weren't being skived off into different directions and not being able to do work that we couldn't resource or do well. So we've set up these operating principles, which are the shareholders, so your operating principles that you can hold us to account over. And so we're saying that the board, first of all, wants to make sure there's an alignment with agreed regional targets. Now, we don't have those at the moment, and that's on our letter of expectations to deliver a set of targets for Matariki to measure wellbeing across the region. And then we need to apply these principles to any piece of work that we do. And so, and I won't jump into all of them, but they're pretty sensible. We're set up as a regional economic development agency, so we want to be ensuring that we're looking at issues of regional significance. That means that there's a clear delineation between the work of Bill and with Reader in terms of economic development at a local level and a regional level. That's not to say we won't support each other, we will, but Reader has been set up to look at that regional benefit. And the household level part is really important too, because the vision for Matariki, for the region, is around wellbeing at a whānau and household level, so we want to always keep that in mind. I think 3 is also really important too. I mean, they're all important, but just to point out that we will only commit to doing things that we've got the resourcing and capability to do, which I know sounds a bit radical, but hopefully will be helpful in being able to actually deliver on the work program. And we don't want to replicate the roles or responsibilities of any other agency that's got the mandate. So we're not a statutory authority. We're not a business. We want to find the space that we can actually add value that's where no one else is doing that at the moment.
Just the status of these, is this in your draft that's gone to Matariki?
No, these are signed off in the charter.
Charter.
Signed off by the shareholder representatives on February 23rd.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then after those initial principles are met, then we're looking for these, basically. So when I take something to the board, we first sort of triage them against these principles and say, does this fit with what our shareholders are asking for us? And then over time, we'll get more sophisticated around that, about weighting what's more important than other, which principles do we weight more, and so on. Just a bit of a background on our pre-incorporation costs. So, like I said, the council's provided the funding. The Hawke's Bay Regional Council managed the funding on behalf of Reader before it was set up, or on behalf of the concept of Reader, if we put it that way. So that pre-incorporation period went through till September. There was some activity that was funded out of Reader's funding that was agreed by the councils. So that was the development of a regional freight distribution strategy that was led by the port, and obviously the fit-out and costs of the business hub moving over to Hastings, and subsequently we've had to put some more funding in to get that up and running as well. So those, and of course there was some board expenses, consultation, legal costs to set up the company. So all of that, we've just been figuring out at the moment how to account for that, whether we take that over onto our books or not. But we're starting really from 14th of September. Oh, there we go. So since incorporation in September, we've established the company, setting up our IT, accounting, policies, processes, all of that type of stuff. We're very lean and mean. We have me at the moment. We have a manager and a kai awhina to run Te Rai, the business hub. And then we're going to be using consultants and contractors for the most part to make sure we've got the right expertise for the right pieces of work. For example, we were able to do a piece of work really early on around the telecoms resilience for the region after the cyclones. We got a renowned expert on telecoms resilience in, and he's just provided the first draft of a study to find out what went wrong with telecoms during the cyclone. And there's going to be a number of recommendations for that. So we're feeding that back into the recovery agency, and you'll all see that in due course at the moment, the providers, telecoms providers are running their eye over that draft. We're obviously finalising our governance arrangement. We've been involved in a few other pieces of work, like kicking off the RETA program, which is a regional decarbonisation initiative that we worked alongside ECA with. And obviously the project management and final fit out of Te Rai, the new business hub. So I'll just talk a little bit about Te Rai. So obviously the region signalled a desire to keep up that concept of the business hub where we have the business support agencies located. So we have in the offices next to the event space, we've got New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, the Chamber of Commerce, Business Central, Export New Zealand and REDA. So they've been all in there for a year. Well, not REDA, but the rest of them. And then what we opened up as REDA on February 23rd was the event and meeting space. And it was lovely to have Councillor Crown attend that. And that space is open for hire for businesses, and we're hoping obviously to foster discussion and have that as a place of genuine collaboration and working. So we've got at a practical level, there's a conference room, 2 boardrooms and 3 meeting rooms. And in the next couple of weeks, I'm about to launch a website and an online booking system. And I'm not quite sure how we're meant to be working that with councils. I need to have a discussion with the CEs about what that looks like for you. But obviously, if you want to use it, just give me a yell and there's space there. We had a collaboration with Toi Mairangi. We do have a collaboration with Toi Mairangi, the Māori Visual Arts School in Heretaunga. So we're using the space as a gallery space for artists. So everything's for sale. Just another way to kind of foster economic development at a small scale. Cool. Any questions about Te Rai or the workings of that?
Councillor Price.
I've probably got a question going back a bit. It's the council funding. Post 225, does that hinge on the LTP?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, poor things. Yeah, just interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, you can feel free to give us a heads up later how that's going.
Well, it's good timing for the presentation.
All right, Councillor Greg.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair. Just a question about Te Rai. How do you advertise the services that it offers to the business community? How do they find out about what they can use it for?
So we're just launching into that. We did a soft launch, really, in February. So once the website's out, we're going to do some social media and marketing, and we've got an ad coming up in the Profit. Reader's going to be doing a monthly column in Bay Buzz to stimulate talk around the economy. So we've got our first column coming out in the next couple of weeks, and there will be a bit of a plug for Te Rai there. So yeah, it'll be arranged, and then the little team that I've got there running it are going to do a few events and things to try to spark interest. We did have a business event and invited businesses from around the region to come and meet all of the business support agencies there and to get to know the space. So when I left today, we had Becca using the conference room and us, Fingermark, using one of the boardrooms. So it's starting to get used, which is good. We're just scrambling to keep up, make sure we've got the right technology. Cool. So let's jump into the letter of expectations. We had a meeting with Matariki on Friday to go through our draft letter of expectations, which will be we're proposing a 6-month period, starting from July 1, just for the 6 months, the rest of the year. But we've also asked for permission just to get on with some activities already now, which we were given by Matariki. So the draft letter of expectations, which I unfortunately couldn't provide to you at the time that I put the papers in because it wasn't quite ready, really lays out in quite a lot of detail actually what the shareholders' expectations of REDA will be. So we have the establishment activities, so that's continuing to set up the company and making sure we've got all of that tickety-boo. And then what we're calling core tasks. So this is the kind of everyday role of reader. So how we've articulated that is that we operate te rai, obviously, on behalf of the region. And I forgot to say, as part of that, also a little bit of a surprise for the board and for me, we're also landlord of that whole building. So we have to have licenses to occupy, manage the health and safety and so on with all of our tenants. It's just been quite a lot of extra work that we weren't anticipating, but we're getting on top of that now. So there's the operation of te rai, a general role around what we call regional economic leadership. So positioning ourselves as the voice of authority on the local economy, the go-to for data and information and insights. As part of that, we're at the moment just pulling together an RFP to be the provider, hold the contract at a regional level for data and insights. So while every council at the moment has their own data, own contract, for example, you've got Dot Loves Data, there may be an opportunity to have one contract for the whole region. We'll set up a website, we'll have the data easily available for everyone who needs it. So we're going out to iwi and business as well to find out what their data needs are, because lots of businesses are already coming knocking on the door. We know when they're developing business cases and so on, they need that data. We also want to support as a core function Matariki around the regional economic development strategy. So that the Matariki Red strategy that was developed about 8 years ago is in dire need of a refresh, but we feel that is probably, with everything that's going on in the region right now, not quite the right time. So we're proposing that we put up a number of targets that we can at least track around some key wellbeing measures on behalf of the region, and then probably next year or maybe even the year after, depending on where things are going, we look at doing a refresh of that strategy. Our reader's also been asked to support the Matariki governance group itself in terms of the secretariat, and I believe some of the funding in year 3 was to be put towards that. So we've hired a board secretary and a communications person or a company to help Matariki just get on top of their meeting logistics and communications. So I hope that you received all a pānui a few weeks back after the last Matariki meeting. And if you didn't, please check your spam or junk mail, because it ends up there very often from MailChimp. And if you pull it out of there, you'll be fine. So the second pānui will be going out in the next couple of weeks, because a lot of feedback that I've heard over the region is that there's a lack of awareness about what's going on in Matariki. So Mayor Alex and Leon Symes from Tātou Tātou are really keen to up the communications aspect of it. So we're providing some funding support for that out of our funding. And obviously we'll continue to support the Cyclone Gabrielle recovery where we can. Other than those core tasks, the rest of the funding then is for the board to allocate to what we call discretionary projects. So that's where we'll be running those operating principles across them and saying, is this a piece of work going to be of value to the region? And what we're suggesting in the first 6 months, or really between now and the end of the year, is that we're really in discovery phase to make sure that we've got enough of an understanding of what's happening in our economy. So we want to commission a few pieces of work. One will be an analysis of the Hawke's Bay economy in general. What's the shape of the economy? What are our particular challenges and opportunities? We want to do a deep dive into an analysis of the Māori economy. So we want to do not just a desktop review, but probably we'll pull in a little group that does some focus groups, surveys and interviews to look at what are the barriers to growth, particularly for Māori businesses, and what are some practical pathways that can address those. It's likely that Reader wouldn't be the organisation that addresses them, but we provide that information, encourage, advocate, so on. We've also recently been in touch with Pacifica Group, talking about how we might want to look at that also for the Pacifica community, because there is a real lack of knowledge around what Pacifica business looks like in Hawke's Bay. There's also a piece of work we're quite keen to do looking at what's missing in Hawke's Bay in terms of sector and business investment. So what are the industries out there that we're not attracting into Hawke's Bay, and why? What are those barriers to investment? So those pieces of research, I think, will be a huge start for us to have a really good understanding collectively as a region about what is going on post-cyclone with our economy, beyond just the provision of data. And then following from that, that will lead then to further pieces of work and more of a direction for Reader about what we should be jumping into. The letter of expectations also lays out what we're not going to do. We thought this was quite important because I've on occasion shown a long list of the things that people have asked us to do, which is up there with like solving the Gaza conflict. But some of the things that we've said in the letter are that we won't provide funding to other organisations' operational budgets. We don't want to take on a project management function for infrastructure projects. We're not going to get involved in any events or training for business development. That's the Chamber and the Māori Business Network, and others have got that covered. Not tourism. And we don't want to duplicate local or central government functions. The letter of expectation also lays out our reporting requirements and our performance targets. So the idea would be, as laid out in the charter, we report through to Matariki 6 monthly, and then that report gets disseminated to councils and other shareholders. And obviously, we're happy to turn up and speak to that whenever you want us to. Anything else to talk about on the letter of expectations? Yeah. Any questions around the letter of expectations or that process?
Councillor Crown.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Kia ora korua, or kia ora koutou. I guess around the letter of expectation and thinking about how the work that you're doing comes through to us, it's really encouraging to hear you offer to come and speak to us frequently, etc. I wondered from our staff, have we started to turn our minds to what that system of communication will look like around workshop reporting? Because the biggest challenge, as I see it for us as council, is actually connecting the mahi that has been done by HB Reader to outcomes for our community at that household level. So have we started to have those discussions or turn our mind to that?
Rachel.
Yeah, there we go. Don't know if you want to add anything to that, but the relationship between Bill and Rita is in a every day, it's a weekly relationship, and in that way, we haven't got any formal reporting back structures other than through the formal report from Matariki to back out to councils. But if there's anything that we need to, if you think there's an agenda or a group of information that you need that we need to get more informally through that relationship, we can do that. Yeah.
Thank you. So I guess I'm flagging that it would be really good to start having those conversations perhaps and designing something that's fit for purpose.
Thank you, Councillor Crown. I think it's a really good point, and I guess we start at the inception with a conversation at this table around KPIs, or you talk about performance indicators and acknowledging we've got Matariki in the middle of that, but actually something at our level that can feed into them, that can form part of the discussion that then comes through to you as those sort of performance indicators are set.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I think that's really important. I think getting into a regular rhythm of reporting and engagement is good for all of us, and it helps us to make sure that we're planning our year ahead well as well. But the mechanism that we can't really control but needs to really be in place at each shareholder level is that the relationship is held at Matariki, for example, by the representative from Napier that sits at the Matariki table. When we, for example, put a draft letter of expectation up that goes to the shareholder representative, that needs to get disseminated down into your council level to ensure that you've had your eye over it and that you get your input and then it gets thrown back up. So how you do that, we're happy to support whatever that looks like, but...
So what stage is that letter of expectation?
So it's in draft, so now we won't sign it off until June the 21st. So between now and June 21st, there's an opportunity to feedback on it.
Well, could we add that as an action point, team, to get that in front of council? It's possibly a workshop discussion that
Great.
we can then feed back through Mayor Wise into Matariki.
Yeah.
And that in turn will inform the reporting down structures that Councillor Crown was talking to.
Yeah, and as I said before too, with having one letter of expectation, we'll be able to, when we report to councils for the funding agreement reporting, we'll have attached the letter of expectation as an annex to it, and we'll be able to use the same report. We're hoping that will work. Use the same reporting template really and the same KPIs. So at the draft, we've got some draft KPIs and they need more work in the letter of expectations at the moment, but they are quite practical and they're not, I'd be really hesitant, I've talked to the board about this too, around having KPIs that are at an economy level. You know, Reader's not going to shift the dial on the economy. You can't see value in us by looking at some broad regional economic metrics. But what you can do is say, for example, I mean, this is a really simple one, the operation of Te Rai, for example. What's the net promoter score? What's the survey feedback from people coming through Te Rai? How many bookings are we getting? What's the repeat business look like? That's just a really low level type of thing. But around economic leadership, it might be, you know, have you got a business advisory group set up? How often are you meeting them? What's the quality of input coming out of those? So we've got just a draft here that's got a quantitative and qualitative column here, and really happy to get input on what that looks like. But I had noticed in some of the drafts before we were involved, they were very, very high level KPIs that are actually impossible to meet, and I don't think that's good for anybody.
Lucy, could I just, I suppose, not challenge, but ask your thinking, I guess, behind that statement that, in my mind, a successful regional economic development agency could, over time, show a contribution to some of those larger metrics. And so I'm interested in your thinking that you don't want to use those as a indicator of success over time.
Yeah, so I mean, we will back ourselves to hope to make a contribution to those large metrics, but when you look at the performance of an organisation versus the economy, the only thing that we've got in control, that we can really control, is the performance of our organisation versus our work program, and I believe that's what you want to hold us to account to. So if we have agreed a particular work program and metrics alongside those, that's something that you can hold us to account. Did you deliver that piece of work or not? Was it a high level? Was it a high quality or not? Did it get the outcome that we want? Versus that higher regional economic indicator, which everyone is contributing to. All of the businesses, councils, iwi organisations, everyone. We wouldn't want to put that on us.
I think a good example is if we do a piece of work on the Pacifica economy, we wouldn't necessarily look to try and fund or implement any of those projects or programs to uplift it, but we'd want to, what we've seen through the course of maybe the last 6-7 months is that everybody wants us to do everything. And even like that sort of transport strategy, we've been asked to lead it. And we said, well, actually, there's a transport committee in one of the councils. We don't want to duplicate, double up on our efforts anywhere. So, but what we have seen is that there's a thought leadership opportunity. There's a gap in the community around how we can sort of maybe push, challenge, advocate and lobby for. And so what we know from our engagement with the Pacifica community is they're a little bit lost. And a lot of them are coming in as RSCs and being managed and not necessarily well catered for through some of our orchard entities. And so they're saying actually they'd rather be involved in that process and involved in that management. So if we can sort of maybe try and reprogram the way we think and do things, and they might actually grab some of that and they're keen, and then that could, to your point, Annie, around actually what's the contribution to the growth of our economy, I think we'll see that happen, but we wouldn't necessarily say, well, okay, we will own that as a metric, but we could probably sit back and go, okay, well, we've influenced it in a way, but it really sits somewhere else. So we have sort of started to get quite clear in the LOE around saying, are we best positioned to try and influence, try and advocate, try and lobby, try and be thought leadership across everybody so that we can sort of support the challenge, but not necessarily put two hands on the wheel of everything. Otherwise, we think we'll get lost in it. And I think that's been a challenge and a problem with some of the other EDAs around the country that we've had a review on, that trying to do too much, trying to be all things to all people, and because economics is so broad. And then, and I don't need to tell you guys, but when you overlay that with our sort of political landscape, and that's even just at a local level, but then you throw over our iwi Māori interest and then commercial interest, it gets even more complex. So we're trying to sort of find where do we best sit and where can we best help, and it's probably going to be through the work program and then how we can influence. And we could probably say, yeah, we might have influenced a growth here and a growth there, and we could draw a bit of a causal link, but I think the programming around the reporting and And even in our last one, and we've had a few to dive in on, we're thinking, actually, what does our community look like in 25 years? So to the long-term planning thinking and the future sort of committee thinking around saying, we know what our population growth is going to look like in 25 years because they're already telling us. What do we need to overlay with that to understand it so we can actually future-proof the thinking and therefore the activity? So we'll probably, come out with thought pieces like that so we can sort of push the region to start thinking, actually, these are the things that are in front of us. We can't ignore them. Infrastructure is a big issue, some massive challenges. Water, as you know, and we all know, is massive. So we're quite keen to sort of start taking position statements and things like that on behalf of the region and with the region. And if that helps sort of get funding out of central government and elsewhere and private investment, then would be, again, that could be a metric, but we won't necessarily own them, we don't think, because we don't want to start to do things, otherwise we think we'll get caught up and have to do too much and probably won't get much done.
Yeah. Kapai, I think that was really good, and I think in my mind I'm sort of compartmentalising, similar to what you said. You've got your KPIs and your deliverables as an organisation, but you've also got these sort of this high level, this initiative which, as you say, you might be pushing, changing, advocating, position statementing. And I think what I would loathe to see you do is just not take note of those sort of regional indicators, which the hope is over time there is an impact on. So whether or not that's like a watching brief for you guys around growth in those areas.
Yeah, and through you, Chair, I think also being that we've described ourselves the role that we'd like to play as a conscience for the region too, there will be times that we will be putting things on the table that some of our shareholders and stakeholders don't want to hear, that a decision that you're making over here is going to have this impact over here in 30 years' time if we're not thinking in a joined-up way. And we all know at the moment, I sit around the Matariki table and think the amount of stuff that is going on in this region at the moment it's outrageous. It's hard for you as leaders to get your head around and keep on top of, and to, I think, I'm not saying you personally, but to ensure that there's really good joined-up thinking going on. We've got climate action committees, we've got future development strategies, we've got water storage issues, freight, all of those things that Shane talked about. So having a space where there's an independent agency that we can use our resources to go and get the best thinking and bring that back to the table it's not a luxury. It's something that we should be doing as a region. The other gap that we haven't talked about too much too is that there is a gap in Hawke's Bay at the moment to really hear the voice of business in a more joined up sort of way too. So we are looking at setting up a business advisory group, if not a number of different business advisory groups, to make sure that we are hearing from business directly about what their barriers and challenges and opportunities are, and feeding that back at a regional table as well.
Things like, we know there's some really good big data gaps, and so to Sally's question, if we did a piece on, say, the Pacifica economy, then how many of those whānau are residing within the Napier boundaries to sort of try and find with some data integrates and where are they and what are they doing? So, and massive data gaps from a Māori perspective. So you don't have any pine forests inside of your district per se, but actually collectively the PSGEs and Māori Ahu Whenua Trust are the largest forest landowners in the region. And yet that's not joined up as part of a conversation. So we just want to understand the opportunities and where we can best sort of play and contribute. So we do want to link and understand how we can share those as best we can. And I guess the other benefit we have is as independence and objectives compared to some of the previous iterations, we want to be pretty clear too that we're not going to agree on everything, but actually we want to understand where the opportunities are, so we've been placed there to sort of test and challenge the region a little bit too.
Councillor Brown.
Kia ora, and thank you for that presentation, it was brilliant. I think you might have answered my question. I just want to sort of clarify it in my head. So you talked about a number of the different sort of committees we've already got. To add to your list, we've got moving towards a more circular economy, so reducing waste and that low carbon economy you sort of touched on. I'm just thinking, is the way that those committees that already exist is the best way for them to influence and work with you through that plan? So if each of those committees were then to to put forward their thinking into your letter of expectations? Is that the way you'd like it to work, or?
I'm thinking through you, Chair, obviously we're still learning how to do this ourselves too, but I think it's probably through just collaboration one-on-one, like the letter of expectation gives us enough room to get out and start building relationships and finding opportunities that make it onto the next letter of expectations, which is particularly why we've done 6 months.
Yeah.
So I think we want to work with the willing too, don't we? There's so much potential, so many areas to delve into. I think there's a piece of work that I don't know enough about yet because I haven't had time to really get my head around it, to have a look at that 30-year view of what are those, pulling together all of the different committees and reports that are going on right now, to even as a starting point.
Yeah.
So maybe over the next couple of months, that's something that I can start working on and connecting with you, for example, on the Climate Action Group and others. But to even have a clearinghouse of what they all are, I don't have yet.
Yeah.
Even a clearinghouse of all the research that's been done in the last 10 years. I've asked council officers to send me everything they've got so that we have a starting point. So I don't want to replicate pieces of work. But it's quite hard to get hold of all of this stuff too, especially when you're new into this world, I'd say.
Yeah, brilliant.
Councillor Price.
Just on cash flow, I think it's a good thing that when you read it, you've got wounded a bit on fixed assets and startup. That will get a surplus that would go to projects, would it?
Yeah.
Because your projects is quite low compared to your startup and fixed assets.
Yeah, so I'll see if I got an updated one here. I put this is 2 weeks old, so it's a bit out of date, believe it or not. But basically it costs around about 650,000, to run the cutter, just to keep Rita floating with basic staff costs, running Te Rai, because we don't know how much income we're going to be able to draw out of Te Rai. So at the moment, it's a draw on our resources and board costs and consultant costs. So we should have about $1 million in the next financial year to spend on projects.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's good.
Yeah. So we can actually, although we did have a warning around that at Matariki, didn't we? That being careful we don't chew off too much, but we also are kind of eager to get into the work.
Thank you.
I forgot to show you this slide, but we, with the board over a series of workshops, have been looking at trying to find the space that Rita can best fit in, and this sort of economic development ecosystem is really broad. It's been a big learning curve for all of us, but a lot of the things that were being put on Rita's table, are already being done by other organisations and other, councils and MSD and others. So we just wanted to make sure that we really find our gap. And I guess that thinking space that we've talked about, that might evolve over time as well. We might get into more delivery or project management type roles, but not for the first couple of years as we find our feet, we think.
Is that the end of your presentation?
Yeah, I think that's the end of it.
You see? Yeah, I think it's really powerful to be quite clear about those, what we will and what we won't do, because like you say, and like Shane said, you sort of can get thrown everything and anything from every direction. So yeah, that was really helpful. If there's no further comment from yourselves, Bill?
I thought it might be useful just to go back on a couple of those ones and sort of echoing what Rachel was saying, that we have a regular back channel of discussion on a weekly basis, but the correct reporting is accountability through the Matariki Governance Group, and that's where it should be. And I love the discussion about the wider global economy, because if things are going well, it's because I'm doing a great job, and if it's not, well,
Reader's fault.
So no, I think this is really useful to clarify exactly what we can expect from Reader, so that we're all singing on the same song sheet, really. So exciting times ahead.
Thank you. And just a reminder, you own us, so we're actually here to perform a service for you that you weren't able to do at your own individual level. So we really want that dialogue to be free and easy, and happy to come and talk and share ideas and, whenever you want.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill. I think that's good. I think we had an action point earlier that we'll do a little bit more work around how we can feed into those statement of expectations or letter of expectations and the reporting back through as well. So I think that's a really good action for us to take away and sort of formalise that input and reporting structure. So thank you, team, for the information. It's been great to see where you're at. I had the pleasure of being at Te Rai yesterday, for Kahumai, and that was Kohumai. That was a great experience, and it's a lovely space you have there. So I encourage all the councillors and the business community to make use of that space.
Thank you.
Right, we've had a good questions as we go, team, but I will open it up if there's any further questions, and if there's not, I'll ask for a mover for our recommendations. Thank you, Councillor Crown, to receive the presentation, seconded by Councillor Tariha. Councillor Crown, any words?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to both of you for being here and getting us up to speed. I think when you create something new and you're basically operationalising something that was theoretical and aspirational for our community that we were able to support to bring to life, the information that you've shared really highlights the amount of mahi that goes into actually starting and bringing that stuff together. And I know that there's a bit of work to still do in that department, but I think the clarity that you're able to provide around what we do and what we do not do will be really important as we move forward. I'm really optimistic and really hopeful, around the impacts that having that joined up thinking will create. And I think that having the actions, doing the thinking from our perspective around how we best feed into it and the types of information that we need to pull from the other reporting mechanisms that are already in place will be key to highlighting to our whānau, to our community, exactly the value that exists in having an organisation like this. So, kia ora.
Kia ora. Councillor Tariha?
Nothing further to say, just tēnei te mihi nui a te kia koutou. Kia pai te haere, ko te kauni hiro ahi riri tēnei mihi kawana kia koutou katoa. Tēnā koutou.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. If there's no further speakers, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much for coming in, team.
Kia ora. Thank
Kia
you.
ora. All right. I'd like to ask Margot Wilson if she would like to join us for our second paper, which is the funding for Cyclone Recovery Community Hub or Community Resilience, which includes the hubs, and Anne Bradbury as well. Welcome.
Tēnā koutou, ko Anne Bradbury toko ingoa. I'm not sure if you've all met Margot Wilson, who is here sitting next to me. Margot has been with the council for 2 months as our community connector and is making, I was going to say great progress, but that might be the wrong way, but making great contacts with members of the communities that have been more affected by the cyclone. We are here today to talk to you about a Lottery Regional Recovery Fund that we want to seek your approval to put in an application for. This fund is for councils and it's for other large community groups to apply for, and we are seeking $631,346 to help our communities build and to help them with their community resilience. There's 4 key areas that we have identified to seek this funding for. The first one is community emergency hubs. The second one is community-led civil defence centres, and that is a name change. That's what our CDCs used to be. They are now community-led civil defence centres, so CLCs. The fourth one is to help preparedness for our older people, including Kaumātua and Kuia. And the final area that we're looking to seek funding for is to improve communication resilience of our CLCs and at our Taradale Library, which will be one of our EOC locations. So happy to leave it there if you've all read the report and just open for questions if you have any.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Margot. And I just quick question from me. I understand this is a fund that is not available to the public as a whole. This is a by invitation fund targeted at this sort of work. So just providing some certainty that we're not dipping into a pot that is, for instance, available for those directly affected.
Through the chair, no, it is definitely separate from the recently announced Cyclone Gabrielle Trust Fund, which is specifically for community. This is an invite only to larger organisations and councils.
Fantastic, thank you. I will open it up to councillors. Councillor Brown.
Kia ora, thank you for the paper and the presentation. A question on the fund itself is how many shots do we get at this? Like if we want more money, can we come back, or is this a one-off application?
Through the chair, it's a one pot. Yes, it's a one-off application.
Okay. And secondary through the chair, I suppose, is there anything else that we would have liked to apply for more of? Is there, and have others applied for more and we're cutting ourselves short? Or?
We have looked at other councils across the rohi and seen what they've applied for. Margot has also spent time with the funders, and we wanted to make sure we met the criteria of what we're asking. So we have applied for everything that we think would meet the criteria of the fund.
Okay.
Did you have some specifics? You were wondering if it fitted within the fund, Councillor Brown?
No, I didn't have any specifics.
Okay.
I just heard others had applied for more, and I was wondering if we could too. That's all.
We did up the number at pre-agenda. Well done, team.
Plus GST and contingency.
Are there any further questions from councillors? There being none, I will put the motion. Oh, sorry, I won't put the motion. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Price, seconded by Councillor Crystal. Thank you. Any thoughts?
No, I think we've covered it. I think when you read the list of what you're going to purchase, it looks pretty good.
Councillor Crystal.
My understanding, this is the lottery that was done in March 18th last year, money. Is it? It's a different one.
Through the chair, no, this is a completely different fund. That's the Cyclone Gabrielle Trust Fund, which is specifically for community.
So this is a different one?
Yes, so it's a different fund.
So sorry, there's a question. But so no, totally for this. I was up in Gisborne a couple of weeks ago and saw their new emergency management facility, which is absolutely awesome. And I know this is not quite there, but it's definitely getting some of the things that they had on site. So, yeah, great.
Sorry, another question. I know we're in the middle of debate. If we're successful, would you expect to come back to us, team, with I suppose, a more detailed plan around how we will spend the money and a bit of an action plan?
Yes, we can do that. I understand we have a year to spend the money, so we'll be working pretty quickly. Well, we're already starting on this process, so this is really seeking funding for work that we're already working on. So yes, we can come back to you.
Great, thank you. Just as an information piece, I think that would be
26
helpful.
million you could win tomorrow.
All right, if there's no further speakers, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, team. All right, our third paper is our resource consent activity update, and I have Nick McCool, our recently appointed acting team leader resource consents, joining us. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you. So I'll be presenting Luke's report today, and I'll be creating the reports going forward. As way of a background summary, since the February update, there has been a 10% decrease in resource consent lodgements compared to the same period 12 months prior. The mix of application types remains steady, being 55% land use and approximately 45% subdivision. The average processing timeframe for a land use consent remains steady at approximately 20 working days. The table below outlines the current resource consenting activities in Napier and the status of these for information purposes. This is not the entire list, but is ones that are significant or noteworthy. Kennedy Road, digital billboard sign is under assessment and further information is provided below. Owen Street is a multi-unit development, is currently under assessment and further information is provided below. Whakarangi Road subdivision is currently under assessment and was previously reported on. 18 Miani Road is under assessment. Cray Street, the mixed-use development, is still currently under assessment. 68 Franklin Road, 59-lot subdivision, is currently under assessment. 11 Lever Street and Waghorn Street are both still under assessment. And of note, 530 to 550 State Highway 51, the mixed-use development, which included 100 storage units, has been withdrawn. Regards to Kainga Ora, 47 Bedford Road is currently still processing, and 11 Maysfield and 3 to 5 Laurie has been approved. Specifically in regards to Kennedy Road, is located at 84 Kennedy Road, and the site comprises retail and commercial premises. Key aspects of the proposal, I guess, is the size of the billboard, measuring 6.5 times 3.5, so 22.5 metres squared on each side of the billboard. It will be located in the southern corner, as shown in the photographs there. The billboard will be a digital billboard and it will be permanently illuminated and it would operate at all times of day. It will be clearly visible from Kennedy Road to east and westbound traffic. The application is currently being assessed and we've requested input from landscape specialists and transportation specialists to help us with that. Moving on to Owen Street. Here we have an application for 24 new residential units. There's an image there of what it could look like. And the activity is a discretionary activity overall, and they're providing 20 car parks on the site. They have also submitted a comprehensive landscaping plan, and this application is also currently under assessment. I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much, Nick. That was a really good update, and it's good to see progress being made on a number of those since our last report. I will open it up if there's any questions from councillors. Noting this is an information paper. For our information, just keep us updated on work in this space. So, yeah, great to receive. If there are no questions from councillors, I will ask for a mover and a seconder. I'm happy to move from the chair, seconded by Councillor Tariha. No further comment from myself. Any from you? No. We will put the motion. All those in favour of receiving the report, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the close of the future Napier committee. Thank you. I'll close the meeting and hand back over to...
Okay, I'd just like to reconvene the Sustainable Napier Committee meeting, and I ask for a mover to go into public excluded. Councillor Mawson, Councillor Crown, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.